Time to call the member for Goldstein.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. And I want to begin by following up exactly where the previous speaker spoke in regards to a willingness and a wish and aspiration that people are free to choose and choose not to consume tobacco-based products, that people will make informed decisions about their health and their welfare, that they will be in a position to make informed judgments, and that they will choose to put their health at the fore. It's a pretty simple principle at the heart of a liberal democracy, but more critically in a society that has to deal with the complex nature of health needs, that people will make the right choices. And the task before this parliament is always how to get those laws right in making sure that people are free to choose to do so. And there are complications always in terms of making sure that we preserve people's freedom to choose and also trying to achieve, shall we say, the ambitions or the collective interests of the whole of the nation. And that's why I'm supporting this amendment today as part of the Customs Amendment. Collecting tobacco duties at the Border Bill 2018 is pretty prescriptive in its title about what its objective and purpose is. And it's a relatively straightforward exercise in making sure that where duties are paid for tobacco, they're paid at the border. So the government gets the revenue, it simplifies the process, it hopefully will reduce cost, but ultimately guarantees the revenue supply for the government to offset, including the consequences of people who consume tobacco-based products, to be able to fund the health and welfare system to support those consequences, which is fundamentally a good thing. But like the previous speaker, I also have concerns about how we always find this right balance in law. And one of the concerns I've had, and I've spoken about this place before, is some of the policies that have been taken in the past have consequences. And there are many people, the great Milton Friedman always argued that we should judge a policy by its consequences, not merely its intentions, and that we've seen policies which have made tobacco-based products interchangeable. That's called plain packaging. They all look the same. They're all treated the same. It's very hard to distinguish between the products anymore. We've also had to measure more and more tax increases on these products, and unsurprisingly, as soon as you increase the volume or the cost of the products, the gap between production and consumption price is considerable. And we know what happens when you do that. It's not just in tobacco-based products. The attractiveness for illegal activity increases as well, because people can make nefarious profits easily by providing counterfeit goods. And we say this against a backdrop where the reduction in tobacco consumption is not going down in the trends of historical trends in Australia. And what we know is that more and more people, because of that gap between production and consumption, looking for alternative avenues, and because we have an interchangeable product now, find it easier to be able to do so, as well as those who would seek to take advantage of that environment, seek to provide products that are counterfeit. And we always have to factor in the consequences of going down this path, Deputy Speaker, because in the end, the government loses because we don't collect the tax revenue when people sell counterfeit products, but we still carry all of the costs and the consequences. But of course, we also face a problem where people have alternative options and turn to essentially criminal behaviour because of the consequences of the decisions the government has made. And I've got to say I have a real problem with that, when the government seeks to actively promote an environment where people want to flout the law. I don't want people flouting the law. I want people complying with the law. I want people to think that they should be doing the right thing by this community, their country, as well as, of course, the freedom, choosing to do the right thing by their own health. And that's been one of the critical problems we've had in much of this space, particularly when people are also denied pathways to actually end their addiction to combustible tobacco products, because we make it illegal for people to be able to access nicotine tablets and electronic vaping. It's on the public record that I believe that, while I don't think it's a perfect solution, and I fully accept that there might be health consequences associated with it, when you actually have a product which actually directly reduces harm and people wish to reduce their harm, that legal pathways for people to be able to do so are a sensible course of action. And we see this in other areas where we talk about harm reduction regularly, because we put people's health and welfare first ahead of the ideological objectives of others. And I will continue to be guided by that, because when I've gone to the United States or Europe, one of the things where they now have vaping fully legally available is actually just how many people used to smoke cigarettes actually switched. Now, it's not perfect. There are people who shouldn't have ever taken up vaping who have. And of course, some of those people may very well have taken up tobacco consumption had they not had that pathway to do so. But the number of dogged serial smokers who were given a choice and chose the least harm path is quite considerable. You see it in the streets. It's not like it's some sort of thing that happens in regional communities away from the prying eyes of the public. It's naked. It's obvious. So much so that you have the National Health Service in the United Kingdom essentially recommending people take it as a pathway because of the potential reduction in harm. Now, not just reduction in harm in terms of people's immediate health consequences, though there are, but potential reduction in harm, which then obviously has to then be addressed through the health system. I'd rather see less people with emphysema, less people dealing with the health consequences going through our hospital system so they can reprioritise and put their services towards helping other people. And sort of make no apology about that. I think it's a fundamental good, Deputy Speaker. And so when we're looking at policies in this space, whether it's around how we collect the tax, whether it's about how we design logos and branding and advertising and compulsory labelling, when it comes down to the tax regimes that are applied and the incentives that drive it, the one thing, Deputy Speaker, we should always look at is what is the actual consequence of what we're doing, not the intent, not the whether we're going to get the applause of the health sociology community and their agendas, because they're fighting wars from years past and looking constantly for new ways to seek grants to continue their research and work. What's the actual consequence on Australians? They should be at the fore of our mind. They're the people that I represent and everybody else in this place represents. They're the people that if we are going, that I would have thought the Australian people want us to be thinking about, not ourselves, not the government, and government first, not the objectives of bureaucratically designed health systems. It's them, the Australian people. And whether we're going to put their health and welfare first, or whether we're going to create incentives for them to do the wrong thing, and more critically, the incentives for those who wish any of us any goodwill, and actually have nefarious intent to take advantage of the decisions that are made in this place. Thank you, Deputy Speaker.
I thank the member for Goldstein.